everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to be going up to Georgia with a couple of friends to see what we can find in the Waycross and Folkston area, as well as just enjoy a nice relaxing weekend of train watching before our busy school schedules come back around this year. Now, we're going to start the video as normal with our narrated portion and then some interesting shots around the area, and then go to a music portion at the end of the video of some cool stuff we saw around Folkston. So I hope you guys enjoy. It's just after 0700 and Dakota and I are set up in Starke just north of Waycross Junction, which is that turnout and signal that begins the Brooker sub out to the west coast and the Florida Northern's mainline connection at Newberry. Way down on the left would be a flashing green limited clear signal at CP Noonan, where this stretch of the Baldwin S-line double track singles up around Camp Blanding. That signal would be for southbound freight M453, running from Waycross the previous night to Baldwin, and then heading south towards Wildwood, Lakeland, and Miami around daybreak this morning, with a short train of mixed freight and auto racks for South Florida. Right off of Madison Street in downtown is the Seaboard's old Starke Freight House, now owned privately by a local family who plans to turn this place into a museum for their community, although work on that has still yet to commence. Next to the old loading dock on the west side of the building is an old ACL trailer, which obviously predates the 1967 merger of the SAL and ACL, now placed right on top of where the SAL hosted a house track that used to break out of Track 2 here just a few hundred feet south of Waycross Junction. Between its good night lighting and peaceful downtown, Starke is quickly becoming one of my favorite spots along this northern section of the S-Line, and one that soon we'll be seeing a lot more of. Starke has even more historic tidbits around the corner, with old Seaboard concrete mileposts still in place adjacent to the main line, and old DTC block signs on the Brooker sub at Waycross Junction. Nothing would be lined out of Newberry this day though, as on Track 1, a high green would show for northbound train M442 out of Tampa. Just a couple of crossings down from the junction is CSX's Starke facilities, housed in a small building similar to Ocala, where the railroad has a large area to store equipment, along with a house track just a few hundred yards to the north on Track 2, where repairs can be made to bad order cars. Remnants of the old house track to the building still show through the asphalt parking, with the old switch being taken out over a decade ago. Here at 8 a.m. now, a couple CSX workers would open up shop for the day by unlocking the doors and heading inside to start their work for the morning. Coming up from the south would be M442, who would not be going terribly quick this morning, as there had been a reported malfunctioning crossing in town, which requires the crew to take a look at 25 miles an hour. But once 442 was clear, he'd start notching up again, now just a couple dozen miles from this crew's terminus at Baldwin. Meeting this 442 around Lottie would be L752, the daily local out of Baldwin, rolling south at track speed today with one solo tank car for Hawthorne, led by CSX 6919, a Jeep 40-2, and a nice sight for a couple of rail fans used to the monotony of rebuilt locomotives in the Bay Area. Next stop would be Folkston, where we'd meet up with Andrew from North Georgia, who'd tag along with us for the next few days. His channel is Georgia Rails, which is the place to go if you're interested in seeing trains on the W&A sub and really anything north out of Atlanta. Jump. First customer this day in Folkston would be I-137, rolling south on Track 2 with plenty of intermodal out of Charlotte for Jack's Ramp in Duval Yard. Passing by at Hilliard on Track 1 would be a northbound out of Jacksonville, calling as I-032, priority intermodal from Jacks to New Jersey, who would have Track 1 all to himself today, lined through Folkston on the Nahunta sub to Jessup, Savannah, and the northeast. Later in the day, we'd head up that Jessup sub, as a good amount of trains had come to a stop in Waycross instead of south towards us, so we'd head up to investigate. Sure enough, this Thursday afternoon would be the end of the work week for quite the fleet of maintenance of way equipment and personnel, after continuing south with their work this day, currently heading back to Braganza siding where a third track breaks out from the siding and where they'd be placing these machines for the weekend. For us, it would be quite the display of equipment on this broiling hot afternoon and would open up the line for a handful of trains to come south now once they were in the clear. Afterwards, we drive back south towards Folkston, stopping at Hague at the north end of the double track that extends onto the Jessup sub at Folkston. We're about 4 miles from downtown Folkston now, where this main line switch and signal will soon be used quite a lot to route trains in and off of the single track main line and around each other as they approach the Florida funnel. South a couple of miles from Hague is Homeland, where M603 would first appear, a train of mixed freight for Winston Yard and Lakeland, and led by one of the few ES44AHs that wear CSX's YN3B scheme, normally seen in the YN3 Dark Future scheme of the mid-2010s. .603 is mostly made up of traffic for the Bone Valley, with sulfur tanks, empty phosphate, and boxcars for the Saddle Creek logistics area, and Lakeland's massive freight presence. Right behind the 603 would be L795, a daily turn job out of Waycross, who heads to Moncrief Yard in Jacks, and one who's usually a pretty big train, and today he'd be no different, as I-026 approaches from the south, set to meet a couple of trains here at Hague, with its first happening right in front of us.
He's already lifted it to them. That's right.
Leading the 795 today would be ES40DC number 5288 with an awesome K5 HLB horn that almost sounded like an RS5T when you're up close to it. 795 and his great horn wouldn't take terribly long to clear, with yet another southbound line right behind him in the form of priority intermodal I-025 to Jacksonville, who would also sport the best consist of the day. Finally, as I-025 would clear the switch at Hague, I-026 would get the green to head north, after waiting here about 45 minutes.
Double yellows. Oh. Serious? Really? You think that's funny?
Following the I-026 on approaches would be M442, the same one that we saw in Starke this morning, now having completed its work in Baldwin, with a fresh crew to take the train the last few miles to Waycross, where this multi-day run will finally end. As most trains out of Baldwin end up, a bit of freight would be added to the consist, a bit dropped, and all the auto racks left back in Baldwin, making 442 quite a lot shorter, now only 5,000 feet of train today for Rice Yard. We'd spend the rest of the day in Folkston, with our last interesting catch occurring just before sunset and one that we'd actually miss while eating dinner together at the house. So a quick drive down 301 to Andrews, just north of Hilliard, would be what it would take to see this guy, symboled M457, with Florida Central's newly acquired SD40-2 in trail. This 4022 is bound for Newberry, brought from the Ohio Central, and it's still seen in its original maroon and gray paint scheme from the Northern Railroad. Once it gets to Newberry, it'll be placed into regular freight service on the now busy Florida Northern West Coast sub, a line that just recently has seen quite the influx in traffic and is expecting even more to come. The next morning, we'd be in Waycross along the Jessup sub just east of downtown as a couple freight trains approached from the north, following each other closely to enter Rice Yard, which seems to be quite the task some days, but not on this day, as M491 starts the parade with a high and wide load in trail. Found a friend. Behind him would be M691 coming out of Augusta with more mixed freight for Waycross after working Savannah's South Over Yard on its way south. Afterwards, we'd swing around the corner to the Fitzgerald sub at Jamestown, where a couple of steep hills challenge trains out of the yard and make for some very good pictures, like in our case, this L738, a local out of Fitzgerald now returning after picking up a train in Waycross led by a vintage power set of a -8 and a -9. 738's power set and their friendly crew would be worth the chase as we'd skip up the line to Boland, where we'd beat the train by just a few minutes and where the crew would acknowledge us here and end this short chase. Heading back into town, we'd hear of an M492 heading north of the Jessup sub, so we'd hit that next. This stretch of the Jessup sub between Waycross and Jessup is one of the fastest and hardest to chase subs on the whole railroad, as freights do a solid 60 the entire way. You can do the same or a little bit more in a car, but the handful of towns and their 30 to 40 mile per hour speed limits will slow you down quite a lot, as we'd experienced today, barely beating the speeding train to Patterson. Hearing another train behind this 492, we'd skip down the line as M690 would come north, which would be our chance to pace the train north a ways on this fastest stretch of the Jessup sub. From there, it would be a drive back down towards Folkston, where we'd stop between Braganza and Race Pond as M603 would approach, setting up for him on a whim on that same crossing that we saw all that maintenance of way equipment pass by around 24 hours ago. Ahead of the 603 would be IO25, who would have to slow down for a slow order just south of Folkston, which would give us time to hop down to Tracy Road and the first crossing south of the St. Mary's River, now back in Florida, as 603 would pound south on track 1, right by the IO25, resulting in my favorite shot of the day. Back north to homeland we go after spending the afternoon in Folkston as we heard P001 coming north. That symbol would be for CSX's office car special, coming north after dropping its executives and summer interns back in Jacksonville after a quick trip to Starke and back. Now the train is empty and is likely getting cleaned on its deadhead move back to Waycross, where the engines and passenger cars are kept and maintained, seen here coming up the hill at Homeland and following a couple trains back to Rice Yard. Next morning, we'd be back in Waycross on a mission to document some old things in the area. But as always around here, there'd be a train in the vicinity, this one coming south right for us, calling us M209 to Jacksonville. This is South Waycross, where the yard lead branches from the main line and where pretty much every crew change for Florida-bound trains occurs, hence the crew base office here and the trackside facilities. With a high green here for that 209, no crew change would be taking place as this mix of intermodal for Jacks and racks for Baldwin combo train would head south with a nice Y2 leader today. From our stance here at South Waycross, you can see the signals at the entrance to Rice Yard there at Brunel Street, about 1.5 miles away, and the end of the double tracks south to Astoria, another few miles down the road. All signals would be red here, however, so we'd meander into town and towards the depot, where U727 would just be arriving from Jessup. This is an extra version of the daily L727 from Savannah, a daily turn job between the two cities, and usually one of the biggest locals on the system, today led by a couple of GE wide cabs with close to 2 miles of freight behind. From this view from the air, you can see what a massive junction this is, between two subdivisions, 3 main lines, and a massive yard just west of the diamonds. That U727 would be the king of the road for now though, sending all adjacent signals red as they'd cross the diamond and take their sweet time to enter the yard. In the background and sitting on track 1 of the Fitzgerald sub would be the next train of interest, who would be getting a crew while 727 passed, and one that would be eager to take their loaded train of ethanol south, departing just minutes after 727's tail end would clear the diamond. We'd head south a ways to Braganza to set up for this Tampa-bound ethanol train at speed, symboled a B795 and a normal train for us Central Florida rail fans. On this Folkston to Waycross stretch of the Jessup sub, there's only 2 sidings, one here at Braganza and one south of us at Race Pond. Both are pretty long sidings for today's standards, although neither of them would be needed for 795's journey south, with all clears all the way to the Florida state line through Callahan, Crawford, and into Baldwin. From Braganza, we drive back into Waycross as we hear of our train of the day approaching the yard, with the power we'd seen yesterday but now facing the other way. Just north of where we got that L738 yesterday at Jamestown is another hill that parallels a dirt road that leads to a few plantation-style homes with lush front and backyards of pecan orchards. Even on this hot July morning, the breeze and quiet farms would be a perfect setting to wait out this next train, calling as L738 from Fitzgerald with its YN2-9 leading the charge as advertised.
SX detector, milepost 591.5.
738 would roll by us and into Waycross, leaving us satisfied with our photos of the old power and sending us east towards the Nehunna sub at a siding named Hortense. Located 9.3 miles north of the subdivision's namesake town, Hortense is the first siding north of Nehunna at 9,896 feet in length. What makes it special to us rail fans are the old signals located at the north end of the siding here. With a USNS R2 type signal guarding the siding here, and a first generation safe train signal posted up next to the main line, these two signals are absolute treasures in today's monotony of the ubiquitous Vader style safe train signals. On the job likely since the days of the Atlantic Coastline Railroad, they still guide trains like I-137 here in 2025, who would be doing track speed through here with a friendly crew and a Jacksonville-bound intermodal train and trail.
Clear signal north end of Hortense, southbound main track, 137 inches CSX, 3154.
Leaving Waycross while we'd be down at Hortense would be M690 bound for Augusta and taking the fast Jessup sub north to Jessup today. Its power would be quite the interesting lash-up, and knowing that concepts like this really aren't all that common nowadays, we'd head north for Jessup, although it would take us all the way to Ludowici before we'd get ahead. Between the three AC-44s and SD-40-2 and trail, the drive would be well worth it, as we'd stop on the way back for IO-32, just south of Jessup now, where we'd encounter yet another friendly crew and more track speed intermodal. From here, the rest of our time would be in Folkston, where we catch a plethora of trains that you'll be able to see, now with Mr. Jim Croce as your narrator. To all the wonderful people I met along the way, many thanks for making this trip so fun, and a huge shout out to Andrew, Dakota, and my dad. This couldn't have happened without you guys, and I'm looking forward to our next trip, whenever that may be. But for now, this is Christian from Multicolor Films. Take it away, Jim.
Operator, or could you help me place this car? See, the number on the matchbook is old and faded. She's living in LA with my best old ex-friend Ray. Gosh, she said she knew well and sometimes hated. Isn't that the way they say it goes? Well, let's forget all that and give me the number if you can find it, so I can call just to tell them I'm fine and to show I've overcome the blow. I've learned to take it well. I only wish my words could just convince myself that it just wasn't real, but that's not the way it feels. Operator, or could you help me place this call? 'Cause I can't read the number that you just gave me. There's something in my eyes, you know it happens every time. I think about the love that I thought would save me. But isn't that the way they say it goes? Well, let's forget all that and give me the number if you can find it, so I can call just to tell them I'm fine and to show I've overcome the blow. I've learned to take it well. Only wish my words could just convince myself that it just wasn't real, but that's not the way it feels. No, 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 that's not the way it feels. Operator, oh, let's forget about this call. No one there I really wanted to talk to. Thank you for your time. Oh, you've been so much more than kind. You can keep the dime. Isn't that the way they say it goes? Well, let's forget all that and give me the number if you can find it, so I can call just to tell them I'm fine and to show overcome the blow. Learn to take it well. Only wish my words could just convince myself that it just wasn't real, but that's not the way it feels. Isn't that the way they say it goes? Well, let's forget all that and give me the number if you can find it, so I can call just to tell them I'm fine and to show overcome the blow. Learn to take it well. Only wish my words could just convince myself that it just wasn't real, but that's not the way it feels.
Total X136. End of transmission.